All right, y'all. I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. We're going to reverse engineer this tank drop. I already dropped the tank. The tank had 4 lines connected to it. These are so rotted. I'm going with the new fuel pump module anyways. I just chopped them off at the top of the fuel tank module. I'll show you that in a second. The best way to get this style fitting off that I found is put a wrench right here on this block, cut that line real close here, and use an impact on that. Spray them down, clean them down with the wire wheel. Here we have a nasty looking line. That's your evap. We're just gonna take that off. Got a clamp. They never come out easy when they're this rusted. We're gonna use the same method on this one as that one. Get it cleaned up. And our ground wire right there goes to that. It's all stripped and rotted. Here's our fuel tank. So if you're messing with a really rusty fuel tank drop, this is what you're gonna run into. That's where the bolt goes down in the bottom. And it goes right here. There's a C-clip that goes in there. It was all rotted out, so I had to cut the bolt out. We're gonna need a new bolt and C-clip for that. So here's our old tank we took out. There's that ground wire that goes there. I got to put a new eyelet on it. This is the 4th hose. It's a vent hose. Goes up to the filler neck, which is getting replaced too. This filler neck was rotted out and leaking here. Customer tried to patch it up with epoxy or whatever, make it last longer. Replacing the hose too, because it's got all that goop on the underside. That's where I cut the lines, just because I knew this was not going to be reusable. So rusty. Some fuel tanks, it's going to be easier for you to take your drive shaft off. This one, I didn't see a problem, so I left it on there. All right, so I'm going to take those fittings off right there. Most tanks these days are going to have plastic fittings with clips, all different styles. A lot of them you got to just squeeze together and work them apart. These ones are metal to a fitting to plastic. So there's all different types of fittings. A lot of them are self-explanatory, but knowing the tricks will help you out. I'm gonna get that ground wire bolt back there taken out, cleaned up, and then we're gonna reverse engineer this guy. Here's a little setup I got. See, this guy is rounding. The other guy came off with the impact trick. I'm gonna apply a little bit of heat carefully here. The lines are drained of fuel, so we shouldn't have a problem. Put a little bit of heat right there. We've got our vice grip to the frame. Hold her steady, and then try to impact that guy off. Had to cut the rubber. You're gonna need a new clamp. Then you can put this sucker in a bench vise and give it some heat. And it finally came out. You can see how nasty that old fitting was. But now we can reuse our brass fitting for that line. I'm just gonna show you how I took the tank out. Right up underneath here, you can see where the old filler neck was. Now all those clamps are rusty and won't come out, so I gotta put vice grips from the back. And take those out, and then reattach it to the plastic right here. They're kind of torn up, but I can fix them, get it tightened down. This was completely rotted off from the filler neck, so I gotta put this in my vise or put some vice grips on the backs of those so I can get those out of there. So I disconnected the vent right there. It was tough to come out, had to work it a lot. And then I just broke that off. Usually you're gonna take the hose clamp off and get the hose out from underneath of there. So take those off first. And then I use these engine stands on the hoist. I've done fuel tank drops plenty of times without a hoist. Use a transmission jack or 2 floor jacks. Get your tank supported up here. Loosen your straps. And then that tank should be just free floating on your jack or transmission jack or engine stands. And that will allow you to come up here over the drive shaft, and that tank will come down quite a ways. These are all flexible lines, wiring harness, and that's where you do all your disconnecting. But on this one, I just cut them right off. A lot easier because I'm replacing the fuel pump module as well. So normally that's what you would do. You get your filler neck off, that hose, get your straps loosened, support the tank, take the straps off all the way, get the tank to lower a bit, do all your disconnects. On a clean tank, plastic to plastic, it's a lot easier, but you lower the tank, then you have room to work on all that. And then once those are all disconnected, you drop the tank all the way. Here's our new fuel tank. Fuel pump module, you just get that float in first. And it lines up with these 2 tabs. So this is our new locking ring, always recommended. And our O-ring. So I gotta put the O-ring underneath this fuel pump module. Work this fuel ring over the lines. And then we're gonna twist to lock it in. That way our fuel tank's all prepped. And the locking retainer ring there, it's got these little tabs. I'm just gonna take a flat head and a hammer and give them gentle taps until they lock all the way in. After we got that on, we're gonna transfer some pads over where they go. You can see on this old tank, they still look pretty nice right here. This bracket is rotted out. I've got another bracket here, not as bad, but still pretty bad. Recommend putting new straps on them, guys. There's our fitting all cleaned up. I got a small hose clamp, so I'm gonna plug that into the plastic line and clamp her down. We've got our fuel tank all prepped up. Got my vent hose reattached. We got our insulation put in place. So I am going to lift the truck up, set that fuel tank on my engine stands, and get her in place. I'll show you. All right, guys, I've got that tank on my 2 engine stands. Did it by myself. You can do it by yourself. So I've got it just kind of hanging here, so I got access to everything. I've already tightened down both these fuel lines. I got to run a new hose for the evap because it was all rotted. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I got the wiring harness hooked up. This, I'm going to clean off a spot on the frame. There was that bolt right there, but it is just rust welded right in there. So I'm going to use a self-tapping screw, clean this up to set the new ground. I'm ready to put my filler hose on. And I've got the vent hose hooked up. And it comes up and around through here. I got it between the frame and the body. All right, I'm gonna run that evap hose and get this ground hooked up and get the filler hose on. All right, guys, we got our ground strap there. Cleaned off a piece of the frame, used a zip screw. Should work good. We got our straps on. Insulation up top. They like to move around, be careful. Unless you glue them down. Ran a new hose for the evap line. It goes from metal to rubber to metal, so it's all right to extend it with some rubber fuel line. Everything's hooked up. When it was still down, I hooked up the fuel filler and then raised it up a little bit and got it over that frame rail. So that guy's in there. And these screws, I had to take these out for the plastic holder there. And they were all rusted in there. I was able to extract all three of them. Well, two of them. This one's just screwed. I could cut it off and put another screw through. And here's the plastic here. Right there, those three bolts. It's just rotted away. Where those bolts are right here, those three. It's just rotted. So I got some vice grips on what's left of them and using a socket to take those off. So I'm gonna get those three out and then get this plastic put right back in there and then work on the fuel filler neck. I don't usually go in this order, but this filler neck had to go into the hose a long ways. So we went with the filler neck in first before that plastic piece, because I had to go deep inside that hose. Used a little bit of grease, PB Blaster, to make it easy. Make it easier. It was tough to get it to sink down far enough where it should be. Now I'm gonna try to finagle that plastic in there. All right, I got her all hooked up. I slid that plastic in between the filler neck and the body. Got my screws started loosely so it could still move around. And it helps to have two people, one person pressing up and turning this, spinning it so the holes line up. Get one started loosely, then go around, get another one, then tighten everything down. Last thing I gotta do is tighten that hose clamp that goes filler neck to the inlet hose and put the vent hose on using new hose clamps. All right, we got everything hooked up now. That vent hose, got my clamp. The last thing we want to do, we got to hook up this ground wire and fill it up with some gasoline, and we are good to go. And I'm so glad this project's done. Besides all the dirt and rust falling in my eyes, every single bolt needed to be wire wheeled, torched out, extracted, one thing or another. So plan on doubling or tripling your time on one this rusty.